Alex, Dr. Drew?
Yeah, and so far, as you mentioned, no word from LeBron James. We'll see. Of course, he's also pretty busy in the NBA bubble right now. We appreciate your reporting, Marla. We want to bring in some guests now with a different perspective on this topic. Joining us now is Cheryl Dorsey, who's a former member of the LAPD herself, and Dr. Sean from Fox Soul. Cheryl, let's start with you. Your immediate reaction to what we're seeing in the streets this weekend.
Well, listen, I'm troubled by the thought that someone might act in a retaliatory way because of the failure of Sheriff Alex Villanueva to rein in the officers down there in the Compton Sheriff's Department. And so if we don't admit that there's a problem, then there's nothing to fix. Listen, he's got a gang of officers down there who call themselves the executioners. There have been reports of shootings in the last few days and months involving the officers from the Compton Police Department. And so let's not pretend that we don't know why people have angst. While I don't condone violence against the police officers, I certainly understand why people may resort to the kind of eye for an eye that I'm hearing talked about on social media because the sheriff and others across the nation don't want to hold errant officers accountable.
Sure, what would you do? You were a supervising officer for the LAPD. What would you do?
Well, listen, I mean, in regards to this particular incident, there's nothing you can do because they were reacting to a situation. Complacency kills, and so I suggest all officers remain vigilant given the current environment. But what we need to do wholesale is we need to hold officers accountable. People are frustrated, and I don't condone violence against police officers. I used to be one. But when you see police chiefs and sheriffs making excuses and minimizing bad behavior, refusing to hold officers accountable, when you see a president who doesn't have the same commitment and decisiveness with regard to swift justice, when a black man is beaten and or assaulted, and I'm talking about Roderick Walker, Jacob Blake, and the other gentleman who was recently assaulted, you hear the president and others talk about what needs to happen in those instances. Nothing. And then when it comes to a police officer, as awful as it is, now all of a sudden everybody's hair is on fire. All lives matter, but we're not addressing all lives. We're only addressing when it's a police officer, seemingly.
Dr. Sean, let's bring you into the conversation and with an appreciation for your excellent branding behind you as well. This is such a serious and important topic, and I think what was, obviously the shooting itself, so shocking, but what was really shocking as well was this idea that protesters were in some ways cheering for the cops to die. That was happening this weekend. What's going on that would lead to something like that?
Well, it connects to everything Cheryl just said. When you have an overall atmosphere of unregulated, unaccountable violence, violence produces more violence. And what's happening, regrettably, because I think Cheryl is absolutely right, all of us are saying, I think, in agreement, that we don't want to see anybody get killed, anybody get shot. We want everybody to live and to flourish. But when you have unregulated, unaccountable violence, it creates rage, and it creates the call for vengeance, a climate for that. And what happened, regrettably, to these two police officers is that the violence that police have perpetuated is now coming back to affect the police. And it's a horrible situation. And it's not until we condemn all violence. I think the sheriff should be ashamed of himself. LeBron James does not have to prove his virtue. He does not have to stand up and prove that he wants every human life to flourish. It should be assumed. It should be assumed that he is against any form of violence against anybody. But again, that's what we're talking about. And Cheryl said it right. It can't just be when police get injured that the institutional mechanisms rise up to the defense of the victim and the hurt. They have to do that all the time. There's a $100,000 reward for the man who shot these cops, and there should be. Where is the reward for the people who killed Breonna Taylor?
Well, and Cheryl, today, Supervisor Catherine Barger, the chair of the LA County Supervisors, expressed real outrage at what happened.
There's been a constant rhetoric around anti-law enforcement. I support peaceful protests, but what I don't support are the type of comments, especially the ones made outside a hospital, blocking an emergency room where two deputies were fighting for their lives, and you had individuals chanting what they were chanting.
So where do we go from here as a society so that something like that never happens again?
Well, listen, I mean, I think where we go is we start having a real honest dialogue about the problem, about the lack of accountability. You know, there's all kind of banter about police reform. Listen, Sheriff Villanueva had an opportunity to address some of the ills that are going on, specifically right there in that Compton Sheriff's Department, about his own deputies, the executioners. And what he said was, I'm not going to hold an inquisition. I'm not going to go around and try to figure out who's tatting themselves to as a badge of honor when they abuse somebody or kill someone. These are his officers, and when you have him talk like that, you understand why now maybe the community is not so sympathetic. Again, I don't condone the violence against those officers. They may or may not have anything to do with the angst that's going on, but know this, there are pictures of that female being circulated on social media saying that she was present and laughing in the face of the family of Andre Squarlado, the 18-year-old who was shot and killed by Compton Sheriff deputies. So there's that.
Just a really, really sad situation all around. Dr. Cheryl Dorsey, thank you both for your continued perspective on this issue. You both have such valuable voices, and we appreciate you sharing them with us.